I had never met my grandfather. When I was growing up, my father, mother, and grandmother were my world to me. When my parents married, my grandfather passed away shortly after. All that is left that I know about are pictures of his wedding and of him with my mother and her brothers when they were younger. However, my mom told me that he was in Japan in World War II, and I thought that was so cool. Thing is, I never found evidence of himself being in Japan until I searched through my attic one day looking for pictures of myself. Then, I finally found it. My grandfather, Joe Rigas, kept a photo album of himself in Japan when he was there as part of the United States Army Air Corps in 1949, 4 years after the war, keeping peace during the occupation of Japan. From this, I can infer that he didn't fight in the Pacific War after all, and was only in Japan during peacetime. He was a part of the 8th Fighter Squadron group. As you can see from the poster with the logo on it, it shows a pilot drawn like a cartoony devil, making them appear to be a very strong force to be reckoned with. There are pictures of the countryside of Kyushu, Japan, where he was stationed. He took the time not only to wander this countryside, but went for hikes in Kyushu as well, taking pictures of the beautiful Japanese landscape. This album has so many photos of my Grandpa Joe and his friends, with so many stories. He must have had his own personal equipment, or professional equipment that he borrowed while on duty. Here they are at a shipyard, likely when they were being sent out or coming home, with my Grandpa Joe being very funny with this photo here of him wearing his military cap. My Grandpa Joe must have been good friends with the Japanese there, taking pictures of them together. He also took portraits of some young Japanese women who looked like they were also having fun spending time with the American soldiers during occupation. Many other photos of this album made me find out how much of a comedian personality my Grandpa Joe had. From beach parties, to making themselves look like goofballs with their shirts off and taking pictures of themselves doing hilarious things. My Grandpa Joe must have thought that he and his pals were worse than the monkeys that they found while they were stationed there. I am so glad to finally find this album of his. With it, I was able to not only discover his past, but what kind of a young, vibrant man that he was in his mid-20s, whom I never was able to meet. Through this album, while he was not a war hero like I initially thought he was when I first heard from my mother that he was involved in World War II Japan, I know now that he contributed an equal role in forging a great friendship between the Americans and the Japanese. And with that, while he couldn't tell me his stories in person, I felt like I knew everything he wanted to tell me through this album alone. And so after he left Japan at the end of his service to marry my grandmother and have my mother, who eventually had me, I feel like I finally met him through this album, and proud to be part of that Rikas family history.